Paige Sedano, whether last night's blowout has you believing in Dak and Dallas. And do you try out kickers the week before the divisional playoffs? And Tom Brady's future. It's a trip, man. And George Sedano with us today. It's great to see you, George. An honor to have you back.
Ribbit.
The man who picked TCU over Georgia. Ribbit. No, you're going the wrong way. What should it be? What should it be? Minus 65?
Wait, they lost by 58.
I don't care what they lost by. They let up 65. You're letting up 65. Oh, I got carpal tunnel. Oh, man. Could you script a more perfect start to a playoff run? Dak dealing, defense deconstructing. Dallas dominating 31-14. Everything you want except the kicking game. We'll get to that in a second. For Prescott, 5 total touchdowns, no INT, has been done 10 times before in league history. Josh Allen did it just last year. But now Dak joins that list. It was the type of win that had Jerry Jones invoking his old championship teams. George, you got a lot of ground to make up here. Did you become a believer in these Cowboys last night?
Look out, Jaguars. Here I come with the largest comeback of the week over usurping you. All right, Tony. The short answer is not really, okay? Now, granted, in the short term, in the micro, they did great, but it was against a team that has the 25th best offense in the National Football League in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, in a Tom Brady who looked very pedestrian, where Father Time, as I've been alluding to, is starting to creep up with him. And here's the thing, the game plan, Tony. I've told you all season long, I've been pining for them to run the ball more, because the stat is this: when their play selection is 59% or more pass to run, they lose 60-some-odd% of the time. When they do the opposite, they win 60+%.
All right, but last night was not about the running game, right? It was about Dak Prescott, whose name you didn't even mention. You're below where you started. Woody Page, I'll bring you in here.
Yes, no wonder you're still going south, George. Don't worry about it. I have a message to Jerry Jones. I want to come to San Francisco and be in the kissing suite with you and all those other people whenever something good happens. We saw more shots of that suite than we did of Dak Prescott, who was responsible for 5 touchdowns. Jerry Jones even took credit for that. He said that he met with Dak before the game and said, don't take any risk, be aggressive. Those sound like opposites right there. But however, Dak Prescott, I have a theory that with that thumb injury he had, I think it's finally getting better. I mean, he was in total control. He was under control throughout the game. He didn't try to rush things. He was looking at the defenses and taking care of himself. Even on that run for the touchdown he did, nobody knew what was coming. I think that was impressive. I am impressed. I didn't trust them practically all season, but after watching them last night, I'd give them a puncher's chance.
Oh, there you go. So they did make a believer out of you. David Dennis, did Dak and Dallas delete doubt for you?
Yeah, I deleted doubt for Dak for sure. He was out there looking like Stetson Bennett against Georgia's TCU squad out there. This was a defining sort of playoff moment for him, especially on the road. Second highest playoff completion percentage in Dallas Cowboys history. Best QBR on the road in the playoffs since they've taken that metric. This was all about Dak looking like he knew what he was doing out there. A few weeks ago, they were talking about backup quarterbacks. Last week, they were talking about how bad he looked against Washington, and now he's over there just completely comfortable. And beyond Dak, we also have to talk about Micah Parsons, who was the second best player out there on the field. 9 pressures on Tom Brady. Tom Brady was 2 for 8 in those pressures with 1 sack. They were the 2 best players, and they look like they can have a chance against the 49ers, even though the defining factor for that, they only have 5 games rest. 49ers have 7. I think is going to play a large factor this weekend.
That's interesting. The microscope on Dak Prescott, Kevin Blackistone, going into this game after the month that he had, the slump, and after this game.
Absolutely. I mean, he was supposed to be the Achilles heel of this particular team, right? This was the problem that they were going to have. Yet he goes into this game, he comes up with a clean sheet, 305 yards passing, 143 quarterback rating, ran the show, kept everybody together. He had the perfect playbook in his pocket. Everything seemed to work. So you've got to be, you've got to like Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. There was no more impressive team this past weekend in the playoffs than the Dallas Cowboys.
There you
they
go.
were up 24-0. Should have been up 28-0. Of course, we'll get to that at another point. But the defense that David just pointed out was tremendous. They pressured the quarterback all day long, didn't allow many runs, beat up people. They were extremely physical. So absolutely, they have more than a puncher's chance going into San Francisco.
Anybody else with Blackistone that Dallas was the most impressive this week?
No!
No,
This is,
no.
Are we taking crazy
What are you
pills?
talking about?
This is like, you guys are all being prisoners of the moment here. This team played against a Bucs team that can't run the ball, that made Tom Brady throw it 60 passes in a
The
particular
49ers
game.
played against a team that backed into the playoffs, and they were down
Who's your
at
most
the
impressive,
half.
George?
What are you talking
San
about?
Francisco?
The Bucs
Seattle.
weren't even over 500. They won the worst division in the sport. What are we talking about?
And
here?
they got
The Niners
and
have
they
the
got
best defense
handled
in
like
the
it.
league, and they have the sixth best offense.
Why did this get you guys to volume 10 of all the things? I had people yesterday tell me the Giants were the most impressive team, and I think that's a pretty good argument, at least
Yeah, but look at that
over
now.
over the one weekend. Yeah. Okay. Now, it has been alluded to, but I'm not sure if you saw this last night. You had to be watching closely. The Cowboys struggled with the kicking game. Today, they said they're sticking with Brett Maher after 4 missed extra points. Does anybody know, mathematically, the chances of 4 consecutive missed extra points happening in a league that hits 94.6%? Anybody want to guess?
1 in 10,000.
125,000 to 1. That's what that was.
Just so.
So Dak was throwing helmets. Peyton Manning, noted kicker disliker, reacted with all sorts of apoplexies while it was happening. I want to ask you 2 questions about this. Can the Cowboys have faith in their kicker, Brett Maher, getting it back? And also, were you sick of him like Peyton, or were you sick for him, Kevin Blackistone?
Oh, I was sick for him. I mean, you just see this happening. We've seen it before in sports where someone gets a case of the yips, right? This is something you do, you practice over and over, and all of a sudden on the biggest stage, it's not working. I really, my heart was breaking for him. Good thing the Cowboys were up so they didn't have to rely on him. Would I stick with him? Absolutely.
David Dennis, would you stick with him?
Yeah, you kind of have to stick with them. I mean, obviously, this was a mental thing. This was a fluky sort of mental thing. And if you start bringing in kickers and trying them out, now he's worrying about his job. That's going to make it, even, harder for him to focus and get over that coming into this weekend. So you got to stick
Woody
with it.
Page?
Well, maybe he does need some competition, Dennis. Maybe you bring in 3 kickers and say, your job's on the line here, and he responds to that pressure. But you don't have a situation of what happened in that game, and you just say, oh, yeah, let's just go ahead. Forget about Chuck Knobloch.
Oh, yeah, another player famously who had, a mental hurdle to get through. George Sedano, I'll bring you in here on the idea that they're not going to bring in other kickers this week.
Well, I get it. You don't want to mess with his mental situation even more than it is. So I'm okay with that. And I was sick for him. Almost as sick as I am right now for myself having minus 67 points.
Yeah, well, Morton Anderson's cracking jokes on Twitter saying, I'm available. He's been retired for 20 years. Dak's throwing his helmet, which I get it. It's a frustrating thing to see it play out. You'd think it's the easiest thing in the game, but the man was suffering right there. It wasn't like Maher was throwing his helmet when Dak was throwing pick sixes last week. We'll move on. Where Tom Brady goes from here, that's our next topic of discussion. Does he return to the NFL? Does he return to the Buccaneers? Does he have anything left? When he threw the red zone interception last night, he was smacking his own head. And then there was the very bizarre, odd slide tackle trip, which was just a borderline play. In the game, he was 35 of 66, barely got to 14 points. David, what's your gut tell you about Brady's future?
My gut tells me that Tom Brady is not a quarterback that can carry you to a Super Bowl anymore. He needs to be in a situation where somebody is already on the precipice of a championship. That's not Tampa Bay. That offensive line is not good enough. I assume he's going to take some of this offseason and get his mind right and figure out why he's making dirty plays like that in the field and find somewhere else to go.
Woody Page?
Well, where do all aging performers go? And
Denver?
in their careers. That would be Elvis. No, Sinatra.
I was thinking of Peyton Manning. Go ahead, Woody.
That would be Cher. All the great performers go to Las Vegas. Josh McDaniels is there waiting for him. And not only would you have an opportunity, maybe that's not a championship timber kind of team right now, but it's a team that's looking for a fan base in Las Vegas. If you go to any games that I have out there, you see the visiting team. It's like when the Chargers play in LA, the visiting team has more fans there than the Raiders. They need to develop a fan base. How do you do it?
This is
you bring in Tom Brady.
More for show then, right? Putting on a show than maybe contending.
Well,
that's where Brady is in his career. You think he's all right with that?
Reunite him with a guy who won a bunch of Super Bowls with Josh McDaniels, and he are like united at the hip.
Georgie.
Tony, Woody wants to give him a residency in Vegas like he's some washed-up like singer or performer at the Tropicana.
You've argued that he is that, right? You have said it's over for him.
But here's the thing. It's not going to work there either because the Raiders have a worse offensive line than the Tampa Bay Bucks. They have a worse defense for sure than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they're in arguably the toughest division in the sport, okay? You have Patrick Mahomes in that division. You have Justin Herbert in that division. And who knows what Russell Wilson will look like with a new coach. That's not the place for him despite Josh McDaniels.
Mm-hmm. Kevin Blackstone?
Well, he'll go somewhere. Look, we're forgetting the fact that this guy has thrown, over 1,400 passes the last 2 years, 10,000 yards the last 2 seasons. So it's not like his arm is washed up. But to David's point, he just needs to be someplace where he's going to have more around him. He can't go out and throw the ball 66 times every time just to get you a win. The guy still has incredible pocket presence. He makes accurate throws. We saw that yesterday. Does he have the arm strength he used to have? Of course not, because we know how old he is. But he is still a winning quarterback.
But I've only heard one option. Woody's the only guy throwing out. No, I haven't heard a destination, George. You got one in mind?
Well, no. The only place he could go win a Super Bowl is San Francisco, and he's not going to go there because the new poster child for underdrafted quarterbacks is
David,
there
you have
Brock
an option in mind?
I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do.
Okay.
Stay where he is. Stay where he is. Build that team out.
Buy or sell? No. Good. You don't play with it. You don't take chances losing it. You don't neglect it. When you have something good, you pour into it. You appreciate it because when you take care of something good, that good thing takes care of you too. Wow, deep thoughts with Lamar Jackson in his repost today. What does that mean? It seems pretty obvious. Today, 2 more posts, or at least photos of himself in a Ravens jersey. David Dennis Jr. on these posts. Do you read a person who thinks it's over or a person who wants to repair a relationship?
As the only millennial on this panel, I know all about passive-aggressive social media posts when relationships are rocky, and this is a classic example of that. Lamar Jackson is posting like he knows he is the prize, like he knows he has the leverage, and he is daring Baltimore to get rid of him because he knows that they are a mess without him. That's him. That's a guy who knows his status and knows his value.
Kevin Blackstone?
Well, as someone 2 times a millennial, which means I have that much more gravitas, let me just explain to you what this means is that he is saying that he wants to come back to the team. He's over all the drama. He's in his uniform. He's ready to play. Pay the man.
And Woody Page?
Yes, as someone who's 4 times your age, David, I think he's trying to be the latest poet in Baltimore since Edgar A. Poe, and that's what he was trying to give to us. But I think he wants out. I disagree with you guys. I think this is saying, you didn't take care of me, I'm going to take my act and go somewhere else.
And now George Sedano, Nintendo 64 here. Where are you on Lamar Jackson's post?
Tony, I may also not be a millennial, but I have covered LeBron James for the last 12 years, so I know a thing or two about passive-aggressive Instagram posts.
Do that. Oh, my goodness, guys.
So what I'll tell you is this, I do feel like maybe this is the 2 sides coming to an accord potentially. Either that or Lamar Jackson's really bored and wants to rile us up.
Buy or sell 2 Los Angeles Chargers. 3 days after collapse, made some coaching moves today. Parting way with offensive coordinator Joe Lombardi and passing game coordinator Shane Day. But all signs point to going forward in the offseason with Brandon Staley as head coach. Joey Bosa supports Staley. Also said his unsportsmanlike conducts were huge this week. but he wanted to focus on referees. Take a listen to this.
I need to be more accountable for my actions, obviously, but it's a heated game. I mean, if I say something to them, I get a $40,000 fine, but if they blow a call that ruins an entire team's season, they're probably back in the locker room after the game like, got that. Oh yeah, got him. Whatever, power trip. I'm sick of those people.
Wow. How about that voice? Joey Besa. George, buy or sell Bosa there?
Tony, I'm selling it. He sounded like Steve Buscemi in The Wedding Singer during his best man speech. Where was Adam Sandler to rip the microphone away from him in that?
To be clear, he did not sound like Buscemi in any way with the depth of his voice. You don't hear Isaac Hayes in there? Go ahead, George.
All right, but anyway, you have the C on your chest, man. Come on. You can't sit here and say, I need to try to be more accountable and it's on me, when you're literally blaming someone else. What are we doing here?
Woody Page.
George, I'll tell you what he sounded like, a petulant child, a kid that didn't get his way and wanted to get back at the officials, wanted to get back at his coaches, wanted to get back at himself. He was just beside himself, I think, and he wants Staley to come back because whenever he throws his helmet, Staley's going to go on the ground and get it and hand it back to him. And he's going to throw it down again.
David Dennis Jr.
Reminder, they were up 27-0. The referees do not dictate the game into that level. You have to take personal accountability for the way that you acted, the penalties that cost you, and especially those late game penalties. He lost his cool, and that is on him. Do not blame the refs for something that you did.
Blackstone.
Which is exactly why the Jaguars changed their play and went for two and sealed that game, is because of Joey Bosa losing his cool. So he needs to apologize to his teammates, he needs to apologize to his fans, and he needs to take accountability by not blaming the referees.
George Scott, I'll give you one last word here.
Since I've gone down and gone down big, I want to try to take KB down with me, despite the fact I love him to death. KB also picked TCU. I'm out.
No, he said a path. They had a path to victory. Well, it's true. That path was not used. You do not. How dare you? How dare you? Ribbit.
Just Joey Bosa me.